Congressional Record published Tuesday, June 17, 2025. The House of Representatives was not in session on Monday, June 16. The House will reconvene on Tuesday, June 17 at 11 a.m. for a pro forma session, with no legislative business scheduled. The Senate met on Monday, June 16, beginning at 4 p.m., called to order by President pro tempore Senator Chuck Grassley, a Republican from Iowa. The session opened with a prayer by Chaplain Dr. Barry C. Black, who gave thanks for light shining out of darkness and prayed for strength and peace for the nation and the world. The Senate then recited the Pledge of Allegiance. During morning business, Senator Grassley recognized June as National Elder Abuse Awareness Month. Alongside Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, he introduced a resolution highlighting the hidden crisis of elder abuse. He noted that 1 in 6 older Americans experienced abuse last year, with many cases unreported. Grassley urged the Senate to honor seniors and called for stronger protections against abuse. He also announced a Judiciary Committee hearing the next day to examine scams targeting older Americans. Senator Dick Durbin, a Democrat from Illinois, addressed the Senate about a violent weekend attack in Minnesota. He reported that gunmen targeted 2 Democratic state legislators at their homes, including John Hoffman and his wife, who are recovering after surgery. Durbin asked for prayers and condemned political violence. He criticized members of Congress who politicized the tragedy and called for unity in condemning violence. Durbin also criticized President Donald Trump's recent military parade, celebrating the U.S. Army's 250th anniversary and the president's 79th birthday. He questioned the use of up to $45 million in taxpayer funds amid proposed cuts to military medical research and health insurance. Turning to cryptocurrency, Durbin recalled President Trump's earlier skepticism of crypto, but noted a change after Trump began profiting from crypto investments. He detailed how Trump launched a meme coin before his second term, generating significant trading fees while many investors lost money. Durbin described this as unprecedented corruption and criticized the Genius Act, legislation regulating stablecoins, which he said would allow Trump and his family to profit with minimal consumer protections. He pledged to vote against the bill. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat from New York, spoke about the Minnesota shootings, thanking law enforcement for apprehending the suspect, who had planned further attacks on public officials. He called for vigilance against political violence and support for victims. Senator John Thune, a Republican from South Dakota and Senate Majority Leader, moved to executive session to consider nominations. The Senate agreed to consider Rodney Scott of Oklahoma for Commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. A cloture motion was filed with bipartisan support. The Senate also considered the nomination of Gary Andres of Virginia to be Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services. After debate, the Senate voted 44 yea to 33 nay to invoke cloture and proceed with consideration. Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island expressed strong concerns about the Genius Act. He argued the bill is fundamentally flawed and exposes taxpayers and consumers to risks by allowing stablecoin issuers to operate with minimal regulation. Reed warned that assumptions about full reserves and risk-free issuers are incorrect based on past financial crises. He criticized the bill's lack of amendment opportunities and its potential to enable illicit financing by criminals and rogue governments. Another senator highlighted further flaws in the Genius Act, including minimal capital requirements, weak audit standards, lack of merger controls, and inadequate enforcement powers. The bill requires failed stablecoin companies to undergo ordinary bankruptcy proceedings rather than bank-like resolutions, risking delayed customer reimbursements. The senator also raised national security concerns about foreign-based stablecoins, like Tether, operating freely in the U.S., despite their links to illicit activities including North Korean weapons programs, terrorism financing, sanctions evasion, human trafficking, and cyber fraud. Concerns were also raised about Tether's lack of independent audits and reliance on El Salvador's regulatory standards. The bill allows decentralized finance platforms to trade such stablecoins without robust oversight, increasing risks of money laundering and evasion of government controls. Further criticism focused on the U.S. government's implicit endorsement of Tether through this legislation, contrasting with Europe's stricter licensing requirements. The senator noted past bipartisan efforts to address these issues were unsuccessful, and lamented that no amendments would be allowed. Potential conflicts of interest were highlighted involving Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick's family ties to Cantor Fitzgerald, which manages Tether's reserves. The senator also alleged that a foreign government used $1 United States dollar, a stablecoin issued by the Trump family, to funnel $2 billion through Binance investments. This raised concerns about foreign influence and conflicts of interest involving President Trump. Despite these issues, the Genius Act allows the president to use the $1 United States dollar name and empowers presidential appointees to regulate stablecoins. Critics warned this could undermine the U.S. dollar's status as the world's reserve currency by enabling political favoritism and financial self-interest. In response, Senator Jim Banks of Indiana praised President Donald Trump's leadership over the past decade. Banks credited Trump with reshaping the Republican Party by prioritizing American workers and opposing illegal immigration. He highlighted Trump's strong stance against China's unfair trade practices and credited tariffs with bringing manufacturing jobs back to the U.S., citing investments by major companies as evidence. Banks also praised Trump's foreign policy as projecting peace through strength, rebuilding national defense, and encouraging NATO allies' defense spending. He called Trump the greatest peacemaker of his lifetime. The Senate passed several resolutions designating May 2025 as National Wildfire Preparedness Month and June 2025 as Great Outdoors Month. Senator Roger Marshall, a Republican from Kansas, introduced a resolution celebrating the 250th birthday of the United States Army and honoring soldiers and veterans from Fort Leavenworth and Fort Riley in Kansas. The resolution recognized historic achievements and recent commemorative events. Several bills gained new co-sponsors from both parties on issues ranging from radiation exposure compensation to housing vouchers and flag manufacturing standards. The Senate received numerous executive nominations across departments including State, Veterans Affairs, Agriculture, Defense, Transportation Safety Board, Postal Service Governance, and judicial appointments in Florida and Pennsylvania. Several nominations were confirmed during the session. The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence met in closed session for briefings on intelligence matters. Senate Majority Leader Moreno outlined the schedule for Tuesday, June 17th. Votes are planned on cloture motions for Olivia Trustee's nomination to the Federal Communications Commission for both her current term ending June 30th and a full 5-year term starting July 1st. Confirmation votes will follow if cloture is invoked. The Senate will also vote on Gary Andres' confirmation as Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services before returning to consideration of legislation regulating stablecoins under the Genius Act. The Senate adjourned Monday evening at 6:59 p.m., planning to reconvene Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. Several committee hearings are scheduled for Tuesday, including Armed Services on President Trump's fiscal year 2026 defense budget request, Commerce Committee hearings on rail network modernization, Energy Committee review of Department of Energy budget, Health, Education, Labor and Pensions Committee examining Labor Department nominations, Judiciary Committee hearings on scams targeting older Americans, Foreign Relations Committee business meeting on nominations followed by NATO Summit Security Cooperation hearing, and select. No hearings or sessions were reported in the House of Representatives on Monday or Tuesday. That concludes today's summary from Congress. Thanks for listening. The full source material for this summary is in the description below.